And our speaker today is Laura Boatman. Laura is in her 17th year with the California Building Trades. She has served as the project coordinator for multiple health and safety training programs under federal OSHA Susan Harwood funding, and has been a primary investigator researcher on 2 CPWR small study grants, one on ergonomics and then a current one on nanotechnology. In between safety programs, Laura has also been an education and outreach coordinator and a program coordinator for the Building California Construction Careers, or BC3 program, educating youth, adults, and workforce development staff about careers in the trades and union apprenticeship. And with that, I am going to hand it over to you, Laura. You should have control in just 1 second.
Thank you, Jessica. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in. I'll just say this is my first webinar presentation, so that's really fun. I'd like to thank Jessica and CPWR, of course, for giving me this opportunity to present today's webinar. The goal of this webinar is to introduce you to our Silica in Construction training program, give an overview of the components, and share the practices that we have found successful. But I'd first like to identify who we are and give some background information. The State Building and Construction Trades Council is an umbrella organization representing affiliate unions throughout California for over 100 years now. Members of our affiliate unions make up approximately 400,000 working women and men in California, including over 51,000 young apprentices. Our union trades work predominantly in the heavy industrial commercial sector. Most of you are probably familiar with it, but things like bridges, highways, mass transit hubs, power plants, big water projects, public facilities like hospitals, schools, libraries, government offices, and a variety of large commercial projects in major cities across our state. Also, state-of-the-art green building, including LEED-certified projects, and alternative energy systems like large-scale solar arrays and wind turbine projects are usually union-built. In 2000, we successfully competed for funding through the federal OSHA Susan Harwood Training Grant Program and launched what would be our first of several multi-craft training projects. Through both targeted topic and capacity building grants, we have built our training repertoire over the years to include the current topic Silica, as well as the previous topics listed here on the slide. The format for these trainings is similar to what we created for Silica, and we continue to train on these topics. A key to our success has been forming good partnerships. CPWR has been an essential, trusted go-to resource, and you're all here on the webinar, so you probably all know this already, but they provide up-to-date information, research data, statistics and charts, training handouts, and consultation. From the beginning, UC Berkeley Labor Occupational Health Program, known as LOHP, has been an integral partner in our grants by providing expertise in developing curricula, training activities and materials, and providing translation review, resource librarian services, and skilled instructors for both English and Spanish courses. The UCLA Labor Occupational Health and Safety Program, LOSH, also worked with us in the early grant years to assist with our training in Southern California. But each year, our own capacity to design and deliver training has expanded. Our in-house capabilities have now evolved to encompass teaching, research, and curricula development. The current Silica in Construction curriculum is our first to be developed completely in-house. CPWR, LOHP, the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Crafts, and Cal OSHA provided essential cooperation and consultation to help us accomplish this. So each program is based on a train-the-trainer model, and we've been successful in getting participation from union, apprenticeship program, and contractor representatives. One of the things people like most about our trainings is that it is multi-craft and involving both labor and management. So this provides an opportunity for problem solving and positive dialogue about health and safety issues, as well as sharing of information across trades. Our goal is to provide program participants with a complete package designed to give them everything needed to accomplish effective training. Additionally, in addition to the Train the Trainer, we also provide direct training in California in the form of hazard awareness seminars for groups of 15 or more by request. I'd like to give some insight about how the process works under grant funding for those who may not be familiar. Some of you may also be grantees. Grants are issued through a competitive process. Typically, OSHA issues a solicitation for grant applications mid-year. Then applicants have a few weeks to write and submit a proposal with a complete work plan, estimated training numbers, and a budget. Then you wait several weeks patiently to hear if your proposal was accepted for funding. Typically, OSHA announces the awards in September. The OSHA grant funding runs for 1 year beginning on September 30th, so you really have to begin quickly and be ready. These are the things we need to accomplish within that 12-month period, essentially all aspects of the program, from creation to delivery and evaluation. It is a fast-track program, and taking on all aspects in-house was challenging. The first months are devoted to research and curriculum development, as well as marketing and logistics. We present Train the Trainer classes in the spring with registration opening in early January. This works for us because it allows ample time for trainers to complete second-tier training in the remaining months of the grant. We consult with LOHP staff as we are developing the curriculum, and once we have a final draft, we have Cal-OSHA do a technical review for accuracy, which is really helpful. All materials created under the grants must be approved by OSHA prior to use, and this includes promotional flyers as well. So you really have to factor in time for that. After the materials are created and approved in English, we have the curriculum, PowerPoint slides, and video professionally translated to Spanish. This translation then is reviewed by our Spanish instructors and ultimately goes through the same OSHA approval process. So after the TOT classes are completed, we continue to track and follow up with trainers to encourage them to complete their second-tier training. And we go out and observe 5 to 6 of their second-tier trainings to assure that the material is being used appropriately and accurately. As I mentioned before, we also deliver 5 to 6 hazard awareness seminars in the grant year. These sessions are usually between 2 to 4 hours each. So there is very little downtime in our schedule. There is always a different phase of the work plan to accomplish. So that's the basic groundwork of our program. Now we'll look specifically at what we did with Silica in construction. This program was designed for use as worker training and is appropriate for all experience levels, journeyman and apprentice. Pre-apprentices can also benefit from these trainings, although they're not a part of our target audience under the grant. We've learned that you can never assume, just because you're presenting to an experienced labor management audience, that they have the information or resources to do effective training, or that they have received effective training themselves. Even experienced trainers and safety managers who completed this Silica course have told us that they learned something new about Silica. We set specific goals for the training, as you see here on the slide, to educate and prepare workers and employers to work safely with Silica. We build a foundation so that workers understand what Silica is and where it comes from naturally, and how that translates into construction materials. Then we look at what has to occur to make this substance a hazard. What forms of silica are we talking about, and how does it enter the body? What specifically does respirable mean? Once this is established, which tools and tasks are most likely to create exposure? What are the health consequences of breathing silica dust? Knowing the associated diseases with silica overexposure, the symptoms and effect on quality of life is a wake-up call and establishes a good reason for using controls and using them properly. Frontline workers need to be educated about engineering, administrative, and PPE controls that they will be asked to implement and follow on the job. Because of the new federal standard, silica is a very hot topic now, or maybe we should say a hot topic again, because historically it was already a hot topic in the 1930s. This historic perspective helps illustrate the arc of the development of the new standard, which was 40 years in the making. I'll talk more about how we approach the standard later in this presentation. Ultimately, we want workers and employers to embrace best practices for working with Silica. So what did we create to accomplish these goals? These are the teaching tools you see here on the slide list that we developed to meet these objectives. So we're going to take a look at each of them individually. We created a PowerPoint presentation with 110 highly visual slides which pair with the curriculum. We tried to minimize words and create prompts and concepts as much as possible. You see a few samples here. We also created a separate Jeopardy review game PowerPoint, which I have in a later slide. We'll talk about that. Our instructor guide curriculum is the core of the training. It follows PowerPoint slides and provides the information to present with each slide, including key teaching points, discussion cues, background information, question prompts, and activity cues. So what you see here on the right is a sample page from our curriculum showing the layout. Each section is headed with teaching objectives and what you will need to teach the module. Each slide is paired with the notes in a format that is easy to follow. It isn't exactly a script, but rather gives trainers what we feel is the essential information to teach, as well as background info that they can choose to include or not. We've received really positive feedback from trainers who are using this curriculum. They tell us that the design makes it easy to teach. Now, the page shown on the left is an at-a-glance summary of the modules, which can help trainers decide how to organize their training. Our training binder also has instructions for trainers and information to help them organize before presenting the training. Trainers always ask us for multimedia tools, so we put together both audio and video resources for this training. Silica in Construction from Danger to Safety is a brand new 8-minute video we created as a companion to the training. It reviews the dangers of silica, construction materials that contain it, tasks and tools that expose workers, health effects, the historic perspective on silicosis, control strategies, best practices for workers and employers. And so far, reviews have been excellent. And we know that it has also piqued the interest of viewers who are not in the trades at all. So we're very, very pleased with that. The audio you see shown here, Workers Speak Up, is about a 3.5-minute MP4 file that presents recording of union bricklayers giving testimony at OSHA hearings in support of the Silica standard. Hearing these journeymen tell very moving personal stories in their own words and voices in the public record conveys a powerful message to other trade workers. We appreciate the Bricklayers International Union for sharing this with us. We included this audio in the health effects section of our training, but participants at our first Train the Trainer class suggested it would be more powerful if we played it at the very beginning of the presentation, after showing how many construction workers are potentially exposed to silica. This ended up being a great idea, and we discovered that not only is it a good icebreaker tool, but it sets the tone of the importance of this training and the very personal impact exposure to silica dust can have on workers and their families. This is a great example of how, as trainers, we can help each other and learn what works best from each other. The other block you see there, Eliminate the Hazard McCarthy Drilling Project, is a 7-minute video that we shot on site at a union construction job in downtown San Francisco, California. And we did this actually for a previous grant called Toxics in Construction. It demonstrates how one contractor has successfully implemented vacuum controls for dowel drilling concrete as a part of a major earthquake retrofit project of an older building. The project superintendent, general foreman, and frontline workers explain in their own words how the control works. I think of this as a kind of testimonial that shows that control strategies are real and not just theoretical. And it also shows the horizontal drill rig, which you see in the promo box there, in action, which was developed in the Bay Area by David Rempel and Alan Barr at the UCSF Ergonomics Lab. So we throw in an ergonomic solution coupled with a silica dust solution. Now, you don't see it here on this slide, but we try not to reinvent the wheel if possible, and we found an existing video produced by WorkSafe BC Canada that does a great job of illustrating how crystalline silica travels deep into the lungs and causes permanent damage. And we use a 2-minute excerpt from it. The complete video is freely available on YouTube. So you're probably wondering, well, where do I find all of these great materials? So they are all available on our Safety Hub website, which is something we created through our OSHA grant. If you just enter safety.sbctc.org in your browser address bar, you should see this home page that's shown here on the slide. And you can click on the promo box for silica training materials or use the horizontal navigation bar above it. I encourage you all to visit the site and check it out. I'm still working on loading the audio file, so that will be coming soon. We also have materials from many of our other training topics there in English and Spanish. You'll see we have our new Silica video available with Spanish voiceover and subtitles. It's already on the website. The PowerPoint curriculum in Jeopardy Game will be available in Spanish soon as well. It's in the process right now. We'll give you the website address at the end of the presentation again. So each TOT participant receives a course binder, a USB flash drive, and a set of laminated cards. We fully realize that not everyone will be giving a PowerPoint presentation, so we converted 20 PowerPoint slides that would be most effective for shorter job site trainings into 10 double-sided laminated cards. These visual aids reinforce information at tailgate meetings or toolbox talks and can easily be used as cues for the trainer or to prompt interaction and discussion among workers. The trainer can use the teaching notes from the curriculum to go with each of these laminated cards because they're the PowerPoint slides. This gives them everything they need to prepare to teach. On a flash drive, we're able to add many more additional resources than we are able to provide in print version. So all of this goes into this binder, so when they walk away from the Train the Trainer class, they have just the binder with all of this neatly packaged inside it. CPWR was a valuable resource for us as we took on designing this curriculum in-house for the first time. They shared their Silica training materials to use as a reference, provided hazard alert and toolbox talk handouts, which you see here on the screen. Yeah, I know you can get those through the CPWR website. They assisted us with photo sources and connections to bricklayers, union reps. We also heavily promoted CPWR Silica Safe website as the go-to online resource. We did a live walkthrough of the site at the class to familiarize people with the tools available there. They also gave us a new tool they had just developed to help workers and employers comply with Table 1 of the new Silica Standard. And this screenshot is there on the right. We included this new best practice tips table in our TOT binder and encouraged trainers to use it. I recently incorporated this table into an exercise at a hazard awareness seminar where we had workers break into small groups, randomly draw a card listing a tool or task they would be using on the job, and having them work together to identify the hazard, determine the exposure, find a control strategy based on Table 1, and then find the best practices from the CPWR table. And this just worked really well. We were very impressed with what the workers came up with. They went beyond solutions that we had come up with and feel confident that they can translate the training into practice. So this is a really great tool. I'll have to defer to CPWR as to how you can get it and how they're making it available. Our curriculum for Silica is organized into a general course introduction and 6 modules as shown here on this slide. It takes approximately 3¼ hours to teach the entire training. And as you'll notice, these modules mirror our training objectives that we showed earlier. We designed a complete package for the Train the Trainer class with the intention of giving trainers variety and flexibility to choose which parts to use and adapt to their specific training needs. It has been a pleasant surprise to find that many trainers have opted to teach the whole package, as we'll see later when we look at some training numbers and hours that they've already accomplished. So I'll briefly go over the key elements included in each module, but the best way to understand what our program has to offer is, as I said, to go to our Safety Hub website and actually look at some of the materials. In the next series of slides, we'll be looking at screenshots from the actual curriculum. So what you're seeing here are the module intros, which you'll notice follow a template identifying the estimated time to teach the module, key points, activities, handouts, and props as appropriate. The course introduction covers background information about who we are, how the project is funded, and gives acknowledgments and credits, kind of covers the boilerplate information that we want in every training. And then it also introduces the topic and sets the course objectives. The introduction to Silica covers what silica is, where it occurs naturally, discusses different forms and types of silica, identifies construction materials known to contain silica, and how workers can find out if materials contain silica if they aren't sure. Silica as a hazard covers how crystalline silica becomes a hazard in the form of respirable dust. We go through 5 factors that determine the potential for a substance to cause harm. And those 5 factors can actually be used, held up against any substance that they're interested in. So we specifically talk about why dose and duration is so important for silica dust, and that silica is known to cause serious disease and is a listed carcinogen. This is the section where we introduce the terms time-weighted average, action level, and permissible exposure limit. We also discuss what different measurements mean, such as micron, microgram, and cubic meter, and make them relevant by comparing them to common things workers will know. We all know the metric system isn't all that well understood in our country, so I think it's really good to help workers have a sense of what it means. Tasks and tools that create silica dust are pretty obvious. It engages trainees to connect what they've learned so far to what they're actually doing at work each day by asking them to identify the tasks they perform and tools they use when working with the materials containing silica, showing how these tools can create overexposure if the dust is not controlled. And it discusses how workers may be exposed even if they are not the ones doing the work that creates the dust. So you can start to see how this curriculum is designed to logically progress with each new section building upon the previous information. But I do want to say they can also be used as standalone modules. The 4th module, Health Effects of Silica Exposure, discusses how silica dust damages the lungs and can affect other organs, signs and symptoms associated with exposure, and detailed information about silicosis and the historical significance of silica dust in worker occupational health, specifically the Hawk's Nest tragedy and how it changed perceptions of work-related illness and workers' rights. Controlling silica hazards introduces the hierarchy of controls and involves the class in using it to come up with ideas for engineering controls to eliminate the hazard if possible, and administrative controls. We also discuss how to do risk assessment, and this section includes before and after photo examples of engineering controls, discusses why PPE may be the least effective control, and how air monitoring works, gives an overview of respirators, very basic, and best practices for contractors and workers. And we're often impressed with the creativity and ingenuity that trainees demonstrate when we go through this section. Really eager to come up with ideas for controls. And finally, the new OSHA standard is perhaps the most dense because our training is not really compliance-driven, and we needed to manage the class so as to stay on task and not get stuck in the weeds over individual specific compliance questions and issues. We attempted to distill the key components of the standard that workers need to know into this module. We kept the focus on what implementation of the standard may change for workers, what will they be exposed to on the job as a result of the standard. This section walks trainees through the basics, informs them about Table 1 and alternative options, air monitoring requirements, competent person, medical evaluations, record keeping, training requirements, and changes to housekeeping control methods. This was the toughest segment to create because there are so many different situations and multiple options that will vary by individual employers and crafts. We cover the basics and bring in an expert from Cal OSHA as a guest speaker who can answer specific questions. We provide links to OSHA compliance resources for employers. There's a small entity compliance guide that's new that we put a PDF for on the flash drive. That's available through the OSHA website. And finally, as I said earlier, as a fun way to review the key points of the training, we created a Jeopardy Game PowerPoint. We play it almost like the TV show and have teams compete. And this turned into a really lively activity, and we had a lot of good fun with it. And people were really serious about getting their prizes. So as far as the actual trainings go, we offered 3 train-the-trainer sessions at various locations in California. Each train-the-trainer class is 2 full days. We teach the entire curriculum, model all the activities, and allow time throughout for discussion and questions, and finish up with a practice teaching session for the participants. Over the years, our TOT classes have gained a reputation among both labor and management for being well-designed, comprehensive, and effective. We use needs assessments and participant feedback to improve our training programs and make them user-friendly. So for those of you who may be interested in marketing and outreach, we developed a colorful flyer, which is shown here on the slide, for the TOT class, and that's distributed to our union affiliates, apprenticeship programs, and contractor associations, as well as all previous trainers. We set up online registration on a first-come, first-served basis. We do not charge any fees for our training. This can be a blessing and a curse because people sign up for it, but we have to really be sure that people don't just decide to be no-shows. So we have to do diligent follow-up with registrants. Now, because Silica was such a hot topic with the release of the new federal standard, we didn't have to work too hard at recruitment this year. The classes filled up quickly and we had waiting lists for each. So we actually increased our class sizes to accommodate more people. So how successful have we been in getting the Silica training out in California? Well, 94 trainers completed the train-the-trainer classes in March and April. And by mid-July, a third of these have already trained over, as you can see, over 1,000 workers and employer reps for a total of an amazing over 3,100 contact hours. What we ask is that all TOT participants, in exchange for getting the training, go out and train at least 20 people by September 30th using the curriculum. And that's, for some people, that's a small number. For some, it seems daunting. We do regular follow-up with these trainers, and many more have training planned. So these numbers will definitely climb over the next 2 months. We're really pleased with how well this material has been put to use so far through apprenticeship programs, at job sites, and at employer association trainings. It has exceeded all our expectations. So you can see by the contact hours per trainee figure at the bottom that trainers are on average doing longer trainings, which shows us they are using most of the modules in the curriculum. But numbers aren't how we tell the whole story. Our grant requires that we do 3 levels of evaluation. For level 1, train-the-trainer participants complete an extensive evaluation form at the end of the class. We use a combination of rating scales and open comment questions to assess each component of the training. Participants rate their overall training experience, individual training elements, and their level of confidence to train others. The results were very positive, with 85% of all participants rating their overall training experience as excellent, which is the highest rating on the scale, and 83% giving individual training elements the highest rating possible of very useful. 100% indicated that they were confident to train others on the topic. The open-ended evaluation questions ask things like, what did you like most? What could be improved? What's the most important thing you learned? How do you plan to use what you learned? And this feedback is really important to us. We take it very seriously to not only improve this training and learn what participants find most valuable, but in planning our future programs. For Level 2 learning assessment, we use a 14-question pre-post test. Participants take the test at the beginning and again at the end of day 1, and I grade the test and assess if there are any areas of the topic that need review or clarification on day 2. Obviously, what we're looking for is good improvement between the pre- and post-test results. Now, on average, about 80% of participants could not pass the pre-test with a grade of 70% or higher. And keep in mind that this audience who's taking this test are safety managers, highly trained apprenticeship instructors. So as I said at the very beginning of this webinar, you can't assume what people already know about silica in construction. Thankfully, on the post-test, this result reverses, and we have over 80% passing the test. Now, you always have some individuals who will not be able to pass the written post-test. This could be due to some literacy issues, or people who have testing anxiety, or some people are just in a real big hurry to leave at the end of the day, and they rush. But we analyze the results and look for patterns or any questions that are consistently missed. The question may be worded in a confusing way, or we may need to improve on how we teach that particular concept. So we always review the entire test with the class and take time to assure everyone understands the correct answers. When we're done, we give everyone an answer key, so when they leave the class, we know they have the right answers. For situations like hazard awareness seminars where we maybe can't use written tests due to time constraints or literacy issues, you can get a good idea of the knowledge level of a group by doing a simplified true-false verbal group quiz with a show of hands or playing a game of some kind. Level 3 impact assessment is the most challenging. This is done months after training is delivered, usually through survey questions to determine what changes occurred as a direct result of this training. Really tough thing to prove. OSHA would like us to prove specifically that exposures were prevented or that behavior was changed. So this assessment is still to be done on our training program. So I'd like to wrap up by sharing what we've learned generally about how to design and implement successful training programs. These are what we have determined to be best practices and are what our trainees tell us they like most about our training through written and verbal feedback. So as far as efficiency goes, we always have well-defined goals and objectives and a clear agenda to organize the flow of the training. Well-designed and clearly presented materials that are easy to use, and we know our audience well and listen to their ideas for what works best for them. For team teaching, myself and Nazima El-Askari from LOHP co-teach each class. Team teaching has worked great for us. It's really beneficial for both trainees and instructors alike. Multiple instructors support and assist each other and contribute their individual expertise, and alternating between our different styles and personalities keeps the class interesting and more lively. We utilize a variety of techniques to engage the audience throughout the training: brainstorms, props, small group exercises, group discussions, buzz groups, audio, video, guest speakers, games. Trainees especially liked that we had samples of rocks, sand, gravel, quartz crystals to pass around, and brick and block that we incorporated into the training. And another very popular prop was a model of a cubic meter that I fabricated out of PVC pipe to help bring the permissible exposure limit concept to life. Some trainers have since made their own and used them at their trainings. All of these props stimulate ideas, questions, and more interest. We also incorporate guest speakers into all of our Train the Trainers. We had 2 for Silica training. On the left, you see Dr. Bob Harrison, our go-to occupational health physician in California, who provided expertise on health effects and medical evaluation. And on the right is Patrick Corcoran, a senior safety engineer from Cal OSHA and a great trainer, by the way, who presented on respiratory protection, enforcement, what regulators actually see happening in the field, and the new standard. These experts complement our training, ground the material in the real world. They're always very popular among our trainees, and they enhance the credibility of our classes. Besides the material we create, we also provide a wide variety of links to other trusted resources and websites. You see a sample page of resource links from our binder. This is just one of 8 pages of our resource guide, and we added a lot of extra resources to the flash drive for trainers to explore on their own. One of the things about our training that people really appreciate is that we have done the research and legwork in finding information for them, which saves them time. In addition to covering Silica, we also train on adult learning and best teaching practices to help trainers improve their teaching techniques. We make this interactive and fun by having them pair up to create a list of their own best and worst training experiences. Then we share and discuss them as a group. Trainees then have to put the good practices into practical use by teaming up to prepare and present a 15-minute Silica training to their peers. So the 2 messages shown here on the slide have become our mantra for designing effective training. And the one in yellow box there, you tell me I forget, show me I remember, involve me I understand. This is really also the mantra of union apprenticeship programs, where it's a combination of classroom work, hands-on instruction, and on-the-job training. It's really the most effective way to get the message to stick with people. But of course, the most critical component to successful training is that we also provide really great food at all our trainings, thankfully sponsored by the state building trades. So no matter how much effort we put into the training package and all these great materials I've just showed you, it always surfaces in the evaluations that you had good food. So that is basically it for my rundown of the program. Here's all my contact information and, again, the Safety Hub website information. And I just want to say a big thanks for your time, and I'd like to turn it back to Jessica for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Laura. Before I jump into the questions that we've already been receiving, I want to just go over a couple things. First of all, I forgot to mention this in the beginning, but yes, we will be emailing out a recording of today's event as well as a PDF of the slides. I'll be sending that email to everyone who registered at some point, probably tomorrow or Friday. I'm also going to include in that email a link to both our Silica Safe website, in addition to Laura's training materials, and also to a webinar that we held with someone from OSHA in conjunction with Eileen Beatty here at CPWR that really talks more about the specifics of the rule and Table 1, and it addresses, I think, some of the questions that are coming through. I want to remind everyone that today we are talking more about the training program, excuse me, the training program. So we are not experts as far as answering some of these questions on how the rule will affect your specific trades. So with that, if I don't answer your question, or if I don't read out your question, it's probably because it falls into that category of beyond our expertise. If you email me separately, I'm happy to work with you to track down the appropriate person to answer those questions. Okay. So I am actually going to read out one of those questions, which is, do I need to provide medical surveillance to all employees in the field? Because I do want to mention that CPWR is putting together a guide for developing a medical surveillance program that discusses who's covered by that provision, and it will be available soon on the Silica Safe website. And with that, I am going to move to the questions for you, Laura.
Okay.
The size of silica that has been discussed in this module, is it nanoscale or not?
Well, what we're talking about is in the scale of respirable dust. So that's what respirable crystalline silica is under the category of respirable dust. So we don't really talk about nano in this. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. Is there a way to access the Train the Trainer course to get the full course?
At this point in time, we don't have any plans through this grant year to offer more Train the Trainer classes, but I would say that we might be open to that if there is sufficient interest. As I said when I talked about the Hardwood grants, your grant work plan is very specific and the funding is very precise, and we incorporate into the grant year what we can fund through the funding we get for that year. So I would say if people have a strong interest in wanting to receive the 2-day Train the Trainer class, that they should contact me through email.
Okay, we have gotten several questions that relate to that, to when they would be able to take the class. So,
okay,
yeah. And
let me just say, let me just add, I know this is going national, and we are based in California, so any Train the Trainer classes we would be offering would be offered in California, you know, unless somebody wanted to partner with us and have us, you know, help us with funding to do it somewhere else.
That was actually a question on here too, so whether employers in other states could participate in the training. So, okay. Let's see. Any plans to provide competent person trainings with more details on control methods and OSHA compliance?
Not through us. No. I get asked the question about competent person training a lot on this, and you know, this is a tough one because the requirements for competent person for Silica are not, well, I find the requirements for competent person in a lot of topics kind of vague. They have to be adjusted for each topic and each situation. So I feel that this could be a very good component of competent person training, but I think for a company to designate someone as their competent person, they're going to have to also have a lot of training on their individual structure, the individual Silica plan that they're going to be creating as part of the standard. That's all something that's going to be very individual per company, and not only per company, but per individual operation within that company, depending on what you're doing. So I think that there's just more components that are more specific to companies and sites and operations that would make it difficult for us to really say that we're creating a competent person training. I wouldn't feel necessarily comfortable with that, but I think this is a solid base of the training, and I certainly think people could use this as part of it. And I think the best thing to do is to go to your individual OSHA consultation reps and say, you know, this is what I'm planning to do. Will this satisfy you as competent person training? That's what I would do to be safe.
Okay. How long is this entire training module?
The entire training module takes, as I said at the beginning, it takes about 3¼ hours to present everything, all 6 modules plus the introduction. And that would be if you were using the PowerPoint, following the entire curriculum, and doing all the activities using the props, things like that. So it's about 3¼ hours total.
Okay. Did the participants receive paid time for going through the training?
That is not anything we get involved with. That would be up to whoever is sponsoring the person to come to the training. So we get a lot of apprenticeship instructors, and you know, they work it out individually with their JATCs for being sent. We get a lot of contractor reps, and it can be everybody from a foreman up to a project manager to engineers and health and safety managers and superintendents. We get a wide variety, and they all work it out with their companies. So I think in terms of, if you want to think about cost, I mean, we because we were funding this year through the grant funding through OSHA, which will be ending as of September 30th for us. We were able to offer this sponsored by that funding from OSHA, so we were able to offer it without charging a fee. The binders, you can't. I wish I could put one through the computer screen so you can actually put your hands on it, but they're very comprehensive and they cost quite a lot to produce. So, if we're replicating this in future years, we would need to consider how are we funding the production of those materials. So we might, I guess what I'm getting at long-winded is we might, if we do opt to do more of these in the future, we might have to charge a fee for the class just to cover those kinds of costs. And that would be, something that participants have to think about getting through their employer or their JATC as well as their paid time.
Okay. What is the status of the rule in California right now, and did the delay of compliance deadline lessen employers' interest in the training at all?
Okay, the status in California was that last October our California Standards, Cal-OSHA Standards Board voted to horture the federal standard, which means that we are taking the federal standard as it was proposed. I didn't mention in this webinar, but I'll say it now. California was a bit ahead of the curve. We already had a Silica standard for construction that was implemented in 2008. It was different from the federal standard that's now in place. So, but California contractors have already been using engineering controls, wet methods, vacuum controls. We did not have a Table 1. We did not have the kind of requirements for air monitoring that the new federal standard calls for. So we're in a position here where contractors, I find contractors in California to be open to the control strategies for Silica because we've already been doing it for these 9 years. So the Standards Board adopted the federal standard. When the compliance date was delayed by federal OSHA, Cal-OSHA decided to also delay it. So our compliance date is September 23rd as well now. And in this interim time, they haven't been enforcing the new federal standard here in California, is my understanding. I mean, I'm not a Cal-OSHA rep, so this is my understanding. And I would not say that dampened the participation at all. I mean, I'll share a funny story. We were in the midst of offering a Train the Trainer class, and we had just finished going through all the compliance dates, and people were waving their phones at me because the news had just come through that FedOSHA had delayed the compliance date. So, you always have to be on the fly a little bit with new standards as things change, and a new administration too. So we're kind of in a unique time here.
And how, within the training, have you, and I guess if so, how have you addressed the confusion about how federal OSHA will enforce the new Silica standard? Confusion is in quotes. I don't know.
That's a tough one for me. I realize that this is national, and so there are a lot of people who may be under FedOSHA and not under state plans. I think because we were specifically teaching this in California, we really worked with Cal-OSHA. So I wasn't working with FedOSHA so much on enforcement. So I think Cal-OSHA, I think everybody now with the new standard is trying to figure out how will enforcement happen, how are we going to comply, and I think that's why, CPWR has been doing such great work in putting out the website and in putting out the Create a Plan tool, and like you're saying, putting out the new information that you're working on now. That you said at the beginning of the question. So, I think that people are trying to wrap their brains around. I've seen a lot of good resources out there. There is the small entity compliance guide that OSHA put out for the new Silica standard that helps employers look at what you need to do and how to comply. So I guess I'm not sure what the confusion is. There may, that would be probably a pretty specific question. What are you confused about? I know in California, we always say go to Cal-OSHA consultation if you have questions about or confusion about the standard. I hope that answers that question.
Okay. Let's see. All right, so the question is, can the Train the Trainer classes be offered through the OTIs? So I guess the bigger question is, would OSHA consider taking the training that you've done through the Hardwood Grant and then utilizing it and providing the training through the OTIs at centers?
It's a great question, and I would like to know that too. So I mean, I'm not an OSHA representative, nor do I work for OSHA, so I can't answer that question. I would say, if somebody looks at this that we've created and they like it, and they also work through OTI, then by all means show them and tell them. I mean, the OTI is kind of separate from the Hardwood Grant, so I can't answer that question because I'm not an OTI person. Okay. I'd be thrilled if OTI was interested in using this. I will say that all material produced under Hardwood Grants, OSHA reserves the right to use it. They actually have a website. If you go to the OSHA website and search for Hardwood Grants, they actually have links to materials that have been produced through Hardwood Grants for years and years. And there's a lot of great stuff in there. And you can go and you can do it, I believe you can search by grantee, and I believe you can search by topic. And they encourage us to not reinvent the wheel and to use materials that have been, and take from materials that have been produced by previous grantees and programs. So, you could check there. So whether OSHA itself and OTI goes there and takes from that too, I'm just not sure.
Okay. Is there any training component on how workers could engage the employer to improve work conditions?
That's a great question. When we do the Train the Trainer class, we don't have it as a specific module, but we talk about workers' rights. We actually have a segment we do called the Cal-OSHA quiz, which is I believe it's 8-question true-false quiz about workers' rights, basically. And you'd be amazed at how many employers, safety managers cannot pass that quiz. So we go through that, and we have a lot of discussion about that. And that's a segment that we get into questions about what workers can do. I mean, what we encourage workers to do is we want to educate workers so that they understand why this is important for them, why these things are happening, and that our stance is that standards are based on the bare minimum that needs to be done. Some employers go way above the standards. And you need to work with your individual employer and the individual company policies. And usually the contractors have protocols that they use. They have hierarchies. They have policies of how a worker will communicate and who they should talk to. So, typically we tell workers, if you find something that you're concerned about, don't immediately call OSHA or Cal-OSHA. Go to your foreman, go to your union rep if you're a union worker, go to your whoever is in the chain of command through your employer and let them know what's going on. And I mean, we pretty much recommend like OSHA enforcement as a last-ditch effort if you cannot resolve a problem by working in cooperation with your employer. So I think if a worker had a real specific problem or issue that they were having and they came to me individually and asked for help, I would refer them to the appropriate Cal-OSHA people that I know would work with them and help them. I mean, what we really want is to resolve the issues and to protect and keep everybody safe. That's our ultimate goal.
And I actually have a comment about that too. This is not specific to Silica, but just talking about how workers can engage employers to improve work conditions in general. We actually have a whole program called Foundations for Safety Leadership, which has various video modules. It's actually an approved OSHA training elective now. So it's on cpwr.com, or you can follow up with me and I can get you the information, but it gives sort of the skills needed to speak up in situations like this, and it shows how both workers and supervisors in situations can interact in a way that brings about positive and safe results, and how supervisors can create an environment where workers feel allowed and encouraged to speak up about unsafe conditions, et cetera. So just follow up with me if you're interested in learning more about that. And then there's actually a similar...
No, go ahead.
Yeah? Oh, I was just going to say that there's a similar question in here about do we have any plans to receive the clever ideas that workers have to control dust on the job. And I just wanted to say that that's another thing that you can always email us at CPWR about. We're always very interested not only in moving research from practice, but hearing from the practice end and bringing that to the research end. We've had other workers come up with inventions and innovations and stuff like that before, and then come to us, and sometimes we're able to fund a small study to explore those ideas further. So if you are in the field, if you're around workers that have brilliant ideas to control dust on the job and you think that those ideas should be taken further, you can always just shoot us an email or contact someone at CPWR, and we are open to exploring those things.
And if I could just if that's okay, a couple of things came to mind on the previous question. Your program sounds fantastic. There is a program in California. We don't run this program through the building trades. Actually, LOHP at Berkeley would be the good place to contact about it. But it's called WASHTEP. It's the Worker Occupational Safety and Health Training Education Program. It's a mouthful, but this is through money from the Commission on Health and Safety at Workers' Comp in California. It's a mandated program, and they have developed really great training materials, and they do these WASH specialist classes, which are geared for workers who want to become educated about how to be more proactive in health and safety on the job. So that, for people in California, that would be something to check out if you're interested in learning those skills. They're great teachers, yeah. Okay, back to our questions. If you have already been through the Train the Trainer course, or I guess if I have already been through the Train the Trainer course, can I purchase the handout materials that you used for the course you offered? I'm not sure which handout materials you're talking about. If you are one of our trainers who already took the class, you should just get in touch with me, because you know where to find me, and let me know what it is you need, because we don't have anything for sale. And the thing about when you produce material as we do under the federal grants, we have a disclaimer at the front, and if you go on and take a look at the PowerPoint slides or look at the curriculum, you'll see one of those boilerplate things is that none of this is all designed for educational, instructional purposes only. None of this may be used for sale or be sold for fees or profits, things like that. So, I mean, our union organization, the State Building Trades, is a nonprofit union organization, and we aren't making any money off of doing this training. So we don't sell things for a fee. If we were to have to ask for a fee for something, it would simply be, down the line outside of the OSHA grant, it would be for just covering cost of production. So we've never done that before, so I'm not really sure. So I'm not sure if you are one of our trainers who did the class in California, and then just get in touch with me and let me know what it is you need. And that's why we make most of the material available on our website, so anybody can get it. So if you need handouts, let me know what it is you need.
Okay. All right, so this next question is more about the rule. I'm going to ask it anyway, Laura, in case you just happen to know. Outside of Table 1 work, air sampling must be done, correct? Without knowing the exposure, we can't determine if the worker's exposure is below or if they need any control or PPE. Is that what you teach in this training program, or do you have any thoughts on that?
I really shy away because I'm not a compliance person. But what we do teach, we teach the basics of the standard. So what's in the standard, there are two ways. It's almost like a dichotomous key. An employer has the option of following Table 1, and if they don't want to follow Table 1, then they're moving into Section D, which is the alternative plan, and that has a whole series, and it gets very detailed, and it has a whole series of when monitoring needs to be done, and if you do this, then this has to happen, and if so it gets very specific, and that option, using that option, requires some sort of either air monitoring sampling being done or producing objective data that's relevant to the precise tools and tasks that are being done. And I think one of the things that people generally are trying to develop, and I've talked to some contractor groups, associations who are trying to do this for their affiliates. I think CPWR might be involved somehow in this. I'm not 100% sure. Is trying to develop objective data that can be used in conjunction with the standard, so that we're not reinventing the wheel every time with air monitoring. So I kind of shy away from the, it gets really specific to that particular situation and what task is being done. I do know that the push is to have people follow Table. If you follow Table 1 and you follow the recommended control strategies, the required PPE, and do it to the specifications in Table 1 for maintenance and just that the equipment is matching what is stated in Table 1, then you don't have to do the air monitoring. And I think that's why the push has been that way.
Now, in follow-up to that question, yes, it did. I'm going to give you a follow-up question now that it also came through regarding how you deal with Table 1 in your training program, and specifically, so if you can't follow the guidance in Table 1 because it doesn't exist, so this question is about drywall dust mitigation, but for tasks where you can't easily follow the guidance in Table 1, do you provide any resources or information about what to do in those situations during this training?
We don't get into specifics. We don't get that specific. We're more of an overview general training about these are the types of controls that are possibly going to be used. We just simply don't have the time or the resources to get into every specific kind of task. There's always going to be some that don't fit, don't plug into Table 1, or don't, and that's going to be, that will have to be handled on an individual basis. So what we would do is, we do provide a lot of links to other sites. If somebody came to me after the fact and said, well, I really need help finding this, we would do legwork and try to find information for them, either from the trade, like trade associations are doing a lot now too. So if you go specifically to like a drywall trades, they might be developing some tools that would be helpful for those specific tasks. But we don't get that detailed in the training that we're delivering under this grant, because it's just it would be too broad. We would be spending all our time trying to do compliance assistance, and that's not the goal or the purpose of the grant or our purpose.
Okay, makes sense. So I think that covers all of the questions that we had about the training. I got a few more times that people asked about the PowerPoint and the recording. So again, let me just say, yes, we have been recording this. I will be emailing all of that out, along with many of the other resources that we have discussed today, since I know that there are a lot of questions about the topic of silica and Table 1 and everything in general. So I will be sending out whatever resources that I have access to, and again, our Silica Safe website. And let me just say, for anyone who didn't get their question answered because it was more specifically about the rule, again, just email me at any time with any of these questions, and I will do my best to track down the appropriate expert, whether it's Eileen Beatty here at CPWR or someone at OSHA. You know, I'll try to put you in touch with someone who can answer those questions. So again, thank you, Laura, so much for presenting on this program.
You're welcome.
And thank you, everyone, for joining and for staying on past the time.
Yeah, Jessica, one thing, I think you said, I think I heard you say, the webinar that was done earlier last year by the OSHA rep about the new Silica standard, that was part of the CPWR webinar. Did you say you're linking to that as well?
Yes.
Because that was a really great webinar.
Yes, I will include that. Some people were probably on the live webinar, but it was on understanding and implementing the new construction silica standard, and David O'Connor from OSHA's Director of Standards and Guidance was the presenter. So, you know, he brought a lot of expertise to the table, and probably within the webinar and within his Q&A really answered a lot of the questions that are coming up today.
Right, that's what I was thinking. It's a great resource.
Already.
It's a great resource. I just want to encourage people, since I'm not an enforcement person and I don't feel, I cannot speak for OSHA or compliance, that would be a good alternative resource for people.
Yes, definitely. All right. Well, thank you very much, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you so much.